Hey guys, welcome back to the video. I'm Luke, an ACA qualified accountant, having passed all 15 of my ACA exams at the first attempt while studying at a Big Four firm. And then after my time at the Big Four, I transitioned into a career within investment banking, and I now spend my days helping current ACA candidates pass their exams. And in today's video, we're going to discuss the final exam on the ACA qualification, the case study paper. And we're going to run through some tips and some advice to help you guys pass that exam. Case study represents the culmination of your ACA studies. It will be the last exam you sit on your pathway. It's the final step and final hurdle that you need to overcome to obtain your ACA. You may be studying case together with CR and/or SPM, or you may be studying it on its own on a standalone basis, but regardless, it's likely going to be the last exam that you sit on the accounting qualification. Now, case study is one of the most talked about ACA exams, not because of its technical content, but because of the way it's examined and how it's different from all of the other 14 exams that you've sat to date on the ACA. You can't really revise for case study in the traditional way. There's no new technical content introduced. There's no real content at all. There's no IFRS standards, no tax rules that you need to memorize. Instead, it's about applying all of the knowledge and all of the skills you've accumulated on the ACA so far to a real life business scenario. This is how the exam works. You're given a 40 to 50 page document, which is a pre-seen set of advanced information about a fictional business, and you'll get this around 6 weeks before the exam. The advanced information booklet will cover things like the business, what it does, its operations, its market and competitive landscape, so who its competitors are, its financial performance, so how well it's been performing from a revenue and profit perspective over the last few accounting periods, its key stakeholders and who its management team are, and finally the strategic opportunities available to the business and also the challenges that it faces. And on exam day, you'll be asked to write a long report based on everything that you've seen in the advanced information pack. The report is broken down into 3 requirements. Requirement 1 asks you to analyse the business's financial performance, typically year-on-year performance. The second requirement asks you to evaluate a potential business opportunity or a strategic option, and the third requirement also asks you to analyse a business opportunity, a second opportunity, often from a different angle, through a different lens. Each section is worth a third of the marks, so 33% of the marks goes to each requirement, so each requirement contributes evenly to the overall mark and overall grade you're going to get in this exam. You need to answer all 3 requirements in full and prepare an executive summary to pass the case study paper. The case study exam lasts for 4 hours, but it is extremely time pressured. I know 4 hours sounds like a long time, but every candidate that I've ever spoken to says they wish they had 6, 7, 8 hours because there's just so much to write in your report that 4 hours just isn't enough and it flies by. The key to doing well in the case study exam is writing a high quality, precise, efficient, focused report. The reason why candidates fail case studies is because they don't properly read the question that they're presented with on exam day, and they write tangential points which don't score marks. Don't waffle, you need to make focused, relevant points that link to the scenario and to the advanced information and directly answer the questions that you're given in the requirements. If the points that you make in your responses aren't really truly relevant to the scenario, then you're not going to score any marks. Candidates that do well in case make relevant points that link back to the scenario and link back to the business that is discussed in the advanced information and are really specific and bespoke. Generic cookie cutter answers and responses won't score any marks. This isn't a technical exam like all of the other exams on the qualification. It's testing your ability to assimilate information from a scenario, apply business judgment and write a tailored, focused report within 4 hours. So with that all in mind, in this video I'm going to walk through some practical tips to help prepare you for the exam, help focus your study and revision strategy, and hopefully make you feel more confident walking into your case study sitting. So yeah, let's get started. My first piece of advice for doing well in case study is to not overrun on the first requirement. Timing is absolutely everything in the case study exam. This is going to be the most important point that I make in this video. Almost everyone who fails the case study exam overruns on the first question. Everyone I speak to that fails case study says exactly this. they spent way too much time on requirement 1 and they ran out of time to produce quality responses for the second and third requirements. To do well on this exam, you need to split your time evenly between the 3 requirements and write quality responses for each of the 3 requirements. You can't write a great response to requirement 1 and write subpar responses to the second and third requirements. You need to make sure your responses to each of the 3 requirements are of equal quality. And the only way you can do this is by allocating your time evenly. Most candidates that fail this exam spend way too much time on requirement 1, don't finish the second or third requirement and fail to write an executive summary. And this can even be candidates that have got a strong grasp on the advanced information, they understand the business and the scenario well, they've revised the case thoroughly, but they spend too much time on requirement 1, they get caught up in that first question and want to write the perfect response and just run out of time to produce a quality answer to the third requirement and fail to write an executive summary. Here's what you need to do when you walk into the case study exam to succeed. You need to set strict time limits for each of the 3 requirements and stick to those time limits religiously. As soon as your time for the first requirement is up, you need to move on to the second requirement straight away. Same goes for when you're moving from requirement 2 to requirement 3 and when you're finishing requirement 3 and moving on to the executive summary. The exam is equally weighted, so it's easy to calculate how much time you have to respond to each requirement. You cannot pass without writing a quality response to each of those 3 requirements. Be punchy and efficient with the points that you're making. Avoid waffling. Make the point that you want to make, back it up and link it to the scenario and then move on to your next point. Keep your responses succinct, relevant, structured, and spread your commentary evenly across the 3 requirements. Writing a subpar response to even just one of the 3 requirements can lead you to fail this exam. Many candidates don't bother to sit their mocks under timed exam conditions because they think, oh, like 4 hours, such a big chunk of time, it'll be fine on the day. Don't make that mistake. You don't truly understand how time pressured case is going to be until you've actually simulated the exam conditions by doing mocks within 4 hours. Aim to complete at least 1, but ideally 2 or 3 mocks under timed exam conditions so you can get a feel for what the exam's going to actually look and feel like when you're under that time pressure. Case study isn't a hard exam, it's not a technical exam, it's not demanding in that sense. It's a test of your exam technique and a test of your time management, so make sure you get prepared by doing mock exams under timed exam conditions. My second piece of advice to doing well in the case study exam is to practice and streamline your approach to responding to the first requirement. Requirement 1 is all about analysing the business's financial performance. Typically, you need to build a profit and loss statement which compares its current year revenue and profitability against its prior year revenue and profitability. Given that you pretty much know what's going to come up in this requirement, you need to practice how you're going to respond to it. So I recommend during revision practicing typing out a P&L in the exam software using abbreviations to save time. So don't write out revenue in full or cost of sales in full, just write things like rev, COS. Use these kind of abbreviations because there's no presentation mark in case study, so your income statement, as long as it's kind of legible and understandable from an examiner's perspective, can be a little bit messy. You should be focused on speed and accuracy when you're writing your responses in case study, not formatting excellence. Your goal is to complete the financial analysis section of requirement 1 as quickly as possible so that you can move on to the narrative and discursive parts of the requirement, because that's where they're going to award more of the marks. A lot of candidates get bogged down and spend too much time on the quantitative side of requirement 1, but really the majority of the marks are for the discussion side of the first question. Avoid spending too much time producing and formatting your income statement. Just get your numbers down into the software and move on to writing qualitative points to support your numbers. Your mock exam practice will help you build confidence as to how you're going to respond to potential questions you could get in the first requirement. You'll use your mocks to refine how fast you can produce your income statement, recognize good year versus bad year performance. In requirement 1, you're only really ever going to get 2 scenarios. Either the business has performed well, revenues increased, profits increased, or the business has underperformed, profits fallen, revenues fallen. That's really the 2 scenarios you're going to get on exam day in requirement 1. So once you've done sort of 2 mocks, you should get a good visibility over what performance looks like in a positive year and what it looks like in a negative year and how you respond to that through your answer. Also in your mocks, you need to practice writing clear, relevant, punchy commentary that supports the numbers that you produce in your income statement and links back to the scenario. Being efficient in how you respond to the first requirement will free you up to spend more time on the second and third requirement. So efficiency in the first question will allow you to accumulate more marks in the second and third question. If you spend too much time on the first requirement, you'll miss out on easy marks in the second and third. So to summarize, get comfortable with how you're going to respond to the first requirement, get used to building out an income statement under timed exam conditions, and think about how you would respond to a scenario on exam day if the business is outperformed or whether it's underperformed. That is really the two kind of outcomes that you're going to face on exam day. So think a little bit about how you would respond in both cases. And the more familiar that you get with these two cases by doing mock exam practice, the easier and faster you're going to get at responding to questions. My third piece of advice to doing well in the case study exam is, no matter what, make sure you write an executive summary. Preparing an executive summary in case study is mandatory. The ICAEW is incredibly clear on this. They say if you don't complete an executive summary, you will fail, regardless of how strong the rest of your exam script is. So whatever happens on exam day, make sure you always write an executive summary. At the end of your exam, make sure you always allocate 15 minutes to writing your summary. In your summary, you need to address all of the 3 requirements, writing 1 to 2 key points which summarize your response to each of the 3 requirements. Summarize your main conclusions and recommendations based on what was discussed in those 3 questions, and make sure you're clear, concise, and professional with what you say in the summary. Treat it like a summary you would see at the top of a real-life business report. Many candidates copy elements of their conclusion into the executive summary, and this is fine, but don't just copy it word for word. Make sure you reorder, refine, and summarize the key points that you make in your conclusion. Don't just copy and paste it verbatim. You need to make it a little bit different, make it a little bit more bespoke, and treat it like a summary. Don't treat it like a conclusion. Make the executive summary feel distinct from the main body and conclusion of your report. Think of it like a client-facing summary. It should be high level, clean, easy to read, not too long, and it should summarize everything else that's in the rest of the report. So regardless of what happens on exam day, by the time that clock has ticked all the way down to 0, you have to make sure that you have written a complete, fully built out, structured executive summary that summarizes your report. My fourth piece of advice to doing well in the case study exam is to make sure before exam day you know the information in the advanced information booklet inside out. I know the advanced information booklet is long, it's usually around 50 pages, and it contains detail on things like the business in question, its products, its people, its operations, its market and competitive environment, and the strategic opportunities and challenges that it faces. Everything contained within the booklet is essential context and backdrop for your exam report, but it's no practical use to you in the real exam. It's 50 pages, it's really dense, so you can't be flicking through the booklet on exam day. You haven't got time. It's far too long a document to navigate under the stringent time pressure that you're going to face in case study. You'll lose valuable time trying to flick through the document to find a certain piece of information. I would personally aim to avoid opening the advanced information booklet at any point during the exam if you can help it. Instead, I would recommend that you create mind maps that summarize everything in the advanced information booklet during your revision phase. So I would create 5 mind maps. 1 mind map that summarizes business overview and draws out all of the key points about the business. A second mind map which covers off the financial highlights, so the key performance indicators of the business. Its products and its services, that would be my third mind map. Number 4 would be people and structure, organizational structure. And then the final mind map I would build is one on market and competitors. Mind maps are far easier to digest and navigate in the real exam. You can't be relying on the full advanced information booklet. It's far too dense, far too information heavy, and it's impossible to navigate under timed exam conditions. So I would recommend you build out mind maps which summarize all of the key points from the advanced information and only use those in the exam. Prepare your mind maps, but I also recommend rote learning all of the key facts and figures from the advanced information booklet. Treat the case study exam as if you're going to meet a client and you're presenting to them. You wouldn't be relying on your notes for every single point of information about the client. You'd want to be remembering their key numbers and figures and key information about the business, what their products are, what their profit numbers are. You wouldn't want to be referring to your notes on every point. If you were meeting a client in real life, you wouldn't want to be referring to your notes when you were discussing their revenue last year, their profit last year. So try and learn as many of the key points and facts and figures about the business from the advanced information as you can before exam day, because this is going to save you time flicking through your mind maps. Try and learn as much as you possibly can off by heart, because it will save you time in the exam, and time is of the essence. The more you retain, the less time you'll waste checking your notes. The advanced information and your summary mind maps are super useful, but it's your responsibility to internalize and memorize as much of the key information from the case as you possibly can before exam day. The more you've memorized and processed before exam day, the faster and sharper your responses to the questions that you're presented with are going to be. My penultimate piece of advice to doing well in the case study exam is to make sure you read the requirements carefully and don't miss out any sub-requirements. Each of the 3 requirements in case is going to have multiple sub-requirements attached to it. To pass the exam, you need to write complete responses to all parts of each requirement. Mistakenly missing out even just one sub-requirement can put your pass at risk. So when you're planning your answers to each requirement on exam day, I literally recommend writing out each sub-requirement in your exam script as a separate header, so you don't miss out any of the questions when you're responding to them, when you're writing out your answers. Writing out a simple header for each of the things that you need to do for each requirement in your exam script means that you won't miss out anything. It makes it easy to track that you're responding to each of the sub-requirements that you've been presented with, and ensures you don't accidentally skip over anything when you're in a bit of a rush and you're under the pressure of the case study exam. Transferring each of the sub-requirements into your exam script means that you can tick off each sub-requirement as you go. So once you've answered each sub-requirement, you can tick it off and know that you've answered everything that you need to in the case study paper. Reserve 5 minutes at the end of the exam to reread all of the requirements, make sure you've answered all of the sub-requirements attached to each requirement, and this final review can help catch anything you've missed or misinterpreted on your first read through. My final piece of advice to doing well in the case study exam is to make sure you pick up the marks for discussing real-world issues. Now, the ICAEW states explicitly that there are 1 to 2 marks available for each requirement for discussing and addressing relevant real-world issues. These marks are easy to pick up and often overlooked by a lot of candidates, so if you can pick up marks for discussing real-world business, socioeconomic, macroeconomic issues that are relevant to the business in your case study, then you'll have an unfair advantage over other candidates that haven't done so. The key point I want to stress here is that the points that you make can only pick up marks if they're relevant to the business that is in your advanced information. The points have to be industry specific and business specific, and they need to be relevant to the business in your case study. Relevant real-world issues that you may want to discuss in 2025, for example, include high interest rate environment, inflation, ongoing impact of the cost of living crisis on consumer demand, AI disruption and the impact of automation across all industries, supply chains being reshaped due to geopolitical issues and tariffs, focus on net zero targets, labour shortages and war for talent, and changes to corporation tax or regulatory environment. These are just some of the generic issues that you may want to discuss in your exam. I would definitely make them more specific to the business that you're presented with in your advanced information. Look at the sector that that business is part of and try and think about what issues are going to be relevant for that particular sector. The more specific you are with the points that you make about real-world issues, the greater your probability of achieving and attaining marks are. Integrate just 1 or 2 punchy points per requirement. No need for long paragraphs here. Just make your points, keep them relatively brief, and then move on. Again, the key point here is to not generalize. Be specific to the business in your case. Cool, so that's some tips and some advice to help you ace the case study advanced level exam. To summarize, be strict on your timings, don't overrun. You allocate your time evenly across the 3 requirements and write high quality responses to each. Don't overrun on requirement 1. This is the number 1 issue and number 1 pitfall that case study candidates fall into. You need to Spread your time evenly and make sure you move on from requirement 1 on time so you have enough time to write high quality responses to the second and third requirement. Also, you need to write an executive summary. The ICAEW are very clear, if you don't write a proper executive summary, you will fail, regardless of how good the rest of your exam script is. You have to write an executive summary to pass case. Know the advanced information well, build out mind maps that summarize the content and the information within the AI and take that into the exam. You haven't got time to flick through the full 50-page booklet, so summarize that material into easily digestible mind maps that you can refer to quickly in the exam. Practice at least 1 to 2 mocks under exam conditions. This exam is super time pressured, so you need to get a flavour for what that's going to feel like by doing your mocks to time, and include 1 to 2 real-world issues in your response. There are marks available for each requirement for bringing in outside knowledge, and the examiner will reward you for doing so. If you've got the exam coming up, wish you the best of luck for it. You're going to absolutely smash it. Look, this is probably the last exam you're going to be sitting, so this is probably going to be the last one of my videos you ever watch. So if that's the case, I wish you all the best of luck for the future, and I'll see you around.